Language learners, thanks so much for joining me again for the best of social psychology to enable you to have a more joyful language learning experience. Today, let's talk about one of the most frequent and most dramatic progress killers in language learning. It's called overwhelm. Overwhelm is a phenomenon that is the reason why so many people give up, why so many people never get fluent in the language they study, why so many people feel demotivated. I have actually many of my students come to me and say, "What do you recommend me? I just can't get the time. I just can't get my head around it. My life is so busy, and also the grammar is so complicated." Well, the solution is, or the best way to get over that blocker is to understand what your brain needs to study in a joyful, in a more rewarding, in a efficient way, and also what your brain needs to memorize better. This is what we're going to cover today. I have a brilliant three-step process that's going to help you to recognize what your brain needs in three classic situations of overwhelm, and they will actually help you to completely structure around your way of studying. And for those of you who join me for the first time, thanks so much for joining. I'm Dr. Alex. I'm a social psychologist, and I share powerful mindset hacks that help you to reach your goal of fluency in your new language with really a joyful process and to have you speak with unshakable confidence. For those of you who haven't yet, please don't forget to download your copy of Everyday Nano, the 7 Steps to Fluency. This gives you all the ingredients you need to actually start building that perfect study routine. And I'm so excited about this, I have a new thing for you, which is on my website, I will provide a 3-page study routine planner that actually helps you, that gives you all the different elements you can choose from to build your personal perfect study routine that is easy for you and that makes it joyful for you to learn. Okay, but now let's start. Number one, so I'm going to present to you 3 typical overwhelm situations and the best remedies for it in terms of what psychological research has shown what your brain needs to get out of that blocking point. Because overwhelm is like procrastination. It's actually a blocker. It's a protection mechanism of your brain to protect you from a very unpleasant experience, actually, because our brains, our whole system, our bodies don't want to naturally put us in stressful, unpleasant situations. So it's a similar mechanism like with procrastination. I have actually published a video on procrastination as well. Watch that if you have that. Oh my God, I can't tell you. Years ago, I had a huge procrastination problem, and I'm glad now, having been through the whole study of social psychology, I know now the tools how I can get myself out of that. This is, by the way, also why I founded this channel, because I want to help you with that, because I see so many people suffering for no reason. Okay, number one of the typical overwhelm blocking situation or challenge is the I don't know where to start problem. The feeling of overwhelm usually kicks in when you have so many choices and it seems like a huge mountain. So you just don't know where to start. So what then your body does, what your brain does, you don't start at all to avoid it, right? So what is the key here? The key is to understand what your brain needs to be in a way kind of motivated again to see it as an easy, fun experience. There's 2 things. No, actually 3. So the first one is the brain needs to have past successes to have associated with what you're going to learn. So you need to create, every time you have learned a sentence, you need to create a repetition and an experience with that sentence where you have retained it already. So if you remember past successes, oh, I actually remembered that sentence, you will go back to learning another sentence far easier. So this kind of enjoyment. The second point is actually your brain also needs to associate positive emotions to the learning experience. So whenever you have fun studying, when you feel positive about it, memory goes up and retention goes up. And the third one is the cognitive overload problem. The cognitive overload is always kicking in when there's too much at one time. Now, you will say, what is the solution then? Because it just doesn't feel joyful. Well, that's exactly the problem. So you need to completely, first of all, go small. The first thing I always tell my students is, if you feel overwhelmed, kind of put away everything that you know, put away all the books, put away all the material, the YouTube videos, the web pages, the apps. Just focus on one thing per day. Kind of minimize what you can do in a day. Look at your day, be very self-honest and say, okay, how much time do I have? In my case, having a very busy life and a full calendar, in weekdays, it's not more than 5 minutes. And on weekends, if I'm lucky, it's 15 minutes to focus on a language learning kind of task I set myself. So what I recommend to you, whenever you feel that overwhelm kicking in, just go small, downscale radically. So the everyday nano method has that as a core of its principle to avoid overwhelm, because you need to build a routine or a habit that you can actually sustain on the long run. Only if you have a sustainable thing that is joyful in the long run, you will succeed with fluency. So go small and think, okay, how can I set aside 5 minutes easily on the long run? So we're talking about fluency. So realistically, fluency kicks in if you go on a study routine that I recommend, it kicks in naturally from 1.5 years to 2 years. If you set the conditions right, you can also be quicker, but you need to set up a habit, a routine that is actually sustainable in the long run. So going small is the first condition. Number two of the typical overwhelm situation is this problem actually of not having a routine in place. It always sounds so easy, but I always ask also my students, what is your weekly and weekend routine? Even if you're on a holiday or even if you're working, how do you incorporate typically your language learning in a kind of natural, flowy way into your everyday life? Because if you don't, it stays that kind of obligation. So here's the research around it. So the first one is habit formation has actually been shown to have your brain memorize quicker, because if you form a habit, a study routine that is continuously kind of part of your everyday life, what you do naturally is you will repeat. And repetition, and that's the second one, spaced repetition. So constantly confronting your brain with the same type of information. So in this case, sentences or kind of structures of how to communicate, the schemata. I explained that in a previous video where I said the brain actually needs to memorize meaningful schemata. And if you build that into your everyday life, the active way of memorizing of your brain will become so much more powerful and actually so much quicker, because it will actually make your brain naturally repeat. So the number two solution against this problem of having no kind of repetition in place is creating a study routine. Study routine means doing the same thing every day, basically. So what I do every day, and you can see this on my YouTube channel, I upload my flashcards for my Italian practice at the moment, is I focus on I focus on one sentence per day. I think you have understood what I mean. So the one sentence per day practice helps you actually to focus on a small chunk, so that was the principal one, and to repeat that. And repetition boosts your brain's memory. Okay, and now the third classic situation for overwhelm is actually the way in which language or its system, so in that sense, a part of it might also be the grammar, is presented to you. And this is my personal opinion. grammar is actually very useful, but the way in which it is presented is in many cases very off-putting. That is my personal opinion. For example, if I give myself courses in German, which is my mother tongue, I absolutely avoid presenting complex structures of how the different cases are formed in German, because it is presented in such a way that it makes the language appear as something complex. And once your brain gets the signal, oh, this is complex, there is a mechanism that gets in to protect you from that. And the reverse of that is actually, again, creating something, and the research has called this context-based learning. You need to get away from that presentation of only complex rules and complex structures to context of your real life application. That is what your brain needs. So what I recommend you to do is always focus on one simple question. This is actually also the secret. The secret is always having that one simple question in mind is, what do I want to communicate? This question will boost your fluency so much, because if you reach out to your first of all, to your brain and say, okay, what do I want to communicate? Then you go into your daily 5-minute routine and then focus on that sentence. Look up only the grammar you need to form that sentence and to actually have it in such a structure that it's recognizable as a meaningful pattern. You will take your brain's attention away from this very complex structure and maybe even vocabulary lists attached to it. That focuses your brain on, oh my God, that is so much. And you go back to the beginning where we started, when it seems such a huge mountain. I have that myself frequently, and I need to always remind myself of these principles myself, to say, whenever I see, for example, now in Italian, these vocabulary lists, I feel, oh God, I will never learn that. And it kicks in again. And I'm like, stop. I need to get away from that thinking. So the best way is, okay, what do I want to communicate? It's only that sentence. Okay, what do I need for that? How do I form that that sentence, and how can I now use grammar in such a way to explain to me how the structure works? And then I move away from that and only focus on repeating. And, as I said in previous videos, have a watch in terms of the techniques I recommend, how you can do that repetition, so that you get into that mode of like learning, like to play an instrument, or learning to sing, to repeat what you have just learned. And as always, I actually invite you to share your own experience. Please drop me a comment and let me know how you go about your daily study routine. I also feel inspired always if I get your comment on how you go about it, because I'm learning my 5th language now, and I'm so thankful for any tips from you. So please feel free to drop a comment. Let's actually also build a community. Let's support each other. And thanks for watching. It was a lovely moment to have spent with you.